Hello and welcome to your next week of science lessons for third grade. So excited that you're here with us. Remember, the really cool thing about having these lessons through YouTube is that you can take a break. Feel free to hit pause, to stop, to rewind, to move forward sometimes, or take a break and come back when you're ready. There's also going to be a book that we're reading, so you can definitely start with the book if you want to. Now let's get started. Remember that the investigative question we keep thinking about and coming back to is what makes organisms in a population more likely to survive or less likely to survive? I want you to be thinking about some ideas right now that you have that make you think that an organism might be more likely or less likely to survive. Think about that. We're going to have a copy of the book called Earthworms Underground, and there's going to be a link added at the bottom of this, but also on the website. So feel free to take a look at that book right now if you want, and you can come back to this lesson after. Just like the organisms you investigated last week, earthworms have to meet their needs in their environment. They need food and water, they need to stay cool, and they need to avoid predators. What organism did you study last week? A lot of my students studied the red fox. We're going to look at page 4 together right now. I'm going to read it to you. Follow along as I read it out loud. And then we're going to talk about the word environment. Introduction. No matter where in the world you go, you will find animals, plants, and other organisms. Every place on Earth is an environment where organisms live. There are wet environments and dry environments. There are hot environments and cold environments. There are environments high in the trees and environments underground. This book is about a type of organism that lives in an underground environment. It is about earthworms. In this section, we read that every place on Earth is an environment and that there are many kinds of environments. We also read that earthworms live in an underground environment. Let's look at some vocabulary. We have been thinking about how living things survive in their environments. So our vocabulary word right now is environment. And all the living and non-living things in an area are part of an environment. What are some of the living and non-living things you see in the earthworm's underground environment? Take a moment, hit pause, and really look at this image and think about the living and non-living things that you observe. You might notice some dirt, some roots, some plants, and some earthworms. Just like scientists make inferences based on their observations and what they already know, readers also make inferences. And this is going to help you understand what you're reading so much better. This is from page 5. Follow along. Can you imagine what it would be like to live underground in the soil? Earthworms have traits that help them survive and meet their needs in their underground environment. What needs do you think earthworms have? How does an earthworm survive and meet its needs in its environment? Take a moment and think about these questions. We read that earthworms can survive and meet their needs underground. We already know that one need organisms have is getting food. So we can figure out or make an inference that earthworms get their food underground. This page doesn't say that earthworms get their food underground, but I figured that out based on what we read and what I already know. This page and this assignment is going to be on your team's assignment, and it's going to be labeled Making Inferences, Earthworms Underground. As you read this book, you're going to be making inferences, and the first row has already been started for you to give you an idea of what your teachers are looking for. So your instructions are going to be to make inferences as you read earthworms underground to help you understand the book. Okay, so on the first column, you'll see this as page number. So we're starting with page 7. And it says that I read that if an earthworm dries out, it is not likely to survive. Let's read more about that and figure out what my inference is based on that. My inference is if an earthworm goes above ground, it will dry out and not be able to survive. And this is based on page 7 on your book. So definitely take note of this when you read the book on your own. Getting ready to learn. Through reading. You're going to read the rest of the book and you're going to record 2 more inferences. It could be from whatever page you want. Right now at this point, I suggest you hit pause, go look through the book, make your inferences, and then come back to this lesson when you are ready. Have fun! Okay, everyone, if you're back, it means that you already read the book and you annotated some of your inferences. So you're ready for the next part of the science lesson, which is connecting traits to survival in an environment. What are some of the things an earthworm needs in its environment in order to survive? Go ahead and hit pause and think. What does it need? If you're thinking air, water, food, and to be able to protect themselves, those sound like really good ideas. One thing an earthworm needs is to protect itself from predators. This bird is a predator. What does that mean? Hit pause and think to yourself, what does it mean to be a predator? In this case, the predator is this animal that is trying to eat the earthworm. A predator is an animal that hunts and eats other animals. Just like all organisms, earthworms must avoid predators in their environment in order to survive. Let's go back to the book and think more about how the earthworm does this. Here's page 15. Follow along as I read. Birds are also predators of earthworms. Some birds stand on the ground and listen for earthworms moving under them. The birds try to pull earthworms out of the burrows. Earthworms hold onto the soil with their tiny hairs. Sometimes the bird catches the earthworm, but sometimes it doesn't. Let's think about this. What helps an earthworm not get eaten by a bird? If you're saying it's tiny hairs, you're right. Let's look at page 8 of the book to observe the hairs on an earthworm's body. By the way, did you know they had hair? I had no idea. Let's look closely. There we can see the little hairs, and their shape is really skinny, and there are a lot of those little hairs all on its body. One thing we observe about the earthworm in the diagram is that it has a lot of tiny, thin hairs. The tiny, thin hairs are a trait the earthworm has. We can also observe that the earthworm is pink. So pink body color must be another trait the earthworm has. And if you're thinking, what's a trait? Well, a trait is something that can be observed about an organism, such as color or size. For example, your hair color, your hair type, your eye color, your height. Since the hairs are thin and tiny, they are good for holding onto the soil. They help the earthworm avoid its predators. Does having the trait of tiny hairs make the earthworm more likely to survive or less likely to survive? Hit pause and answer this question and be able to explain the why behind your opinion. Although the hairs help the earthworm stay underground, it is still possible that a bird could pull hard enough on an earthworm to catch it and eat it. That is why we don't say for sure that an earthworm will survive just because it has a trait of tiny hairs. Instead, we say the earthworm is more likely to survive. Now, I'm going to introduce you to the idea of concept mapping. Scientists use specific scientific words to help them explain things. These are some of the science words we have been using in our investigation of how organisms survive. Environment, organism, survive. Now we will think about how these science words are related. I'll start by giving you an example. Let's put organism and survive next to each other and see how they are related. There are even more ways to talk about how these two words are related. So we can think that we know that organisms are likely to survive if they can get food in their environment. There are other ways that they can be related, and you're going to have an opportunity to discuss and add these relationships into your assignment. Let's practice with another set of words. We have organism and environment. What are some ways that the words organism and environment are related to each other? Go ahead and hit pause and think about this. If you're thinking organisms live in environments, and environments have things that help organisms survive, you're absolutely on the right track. But there are so many other ways that you can relate these two words. Today, you're going to choose 2 word cards and discuss how those words are related to each other. You may use the same card more than once if you want to. So we have the card organism, survive, and environment. What ideas do you have about how these words are related to each other? You're going to include your ideas in your assignment this week. Remember, you're going to choose organism, survive, environment. You're going to choose 2 of these and tell us how they're related to each other. Or if you want to use them all, that sounds like a great idea too. This is the end of the lesson. Make sure to read the book, do your assignment, and message your teachers if you have any questions. So excited to be learning science with you. See you next week.